ended. The Clone War has.
The life force of your bond, a power like life itself, unseen for generations, a dyad in the force.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Dyad in the Forest, episode 188. Getting closer and closer to that 200 episode mark. Shout out to Kenneth Carey for being a member of Dyad Squadron for 28 months. Appreciate your support. Choco, we're joined by a very special guest. Who are we joined by?
That's yes. Who are we joined by? No, thank you so much for coming on. But if you want to start by just introducing yourself and where the good people can find you.
Hi, my name is Patricia Jackson, and I am an author. I've written several things in the Star Wars universe. I wrote 20 years ago in the Star Wars Adventure Journal. You can find me on Twitter at Tristan with an E. You can also find me on Instagram at By Birthright, and you can also find my author website, bybirthright.com.
Awesome. Do people know your AO3?
Oh, no, they don't.
No, they don't.
Soelle Kiss, SOELLEKHISS, if you want some acolyte love because you just need to live in that moment. Yeah, you can visit that.
So, I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything, but you really love that. You really love that kind of dynamic between Osha and the stranger, don't you? It's very spicy.
I am fascinated by just the dark side.
Yeah.
I have been, I guess, skeptical of the Jedi since I was 8 years old. You know,
Yeah.
I thought that Ben Kenobi did Luke ugly when his aunt and uncle were murked. So when you show me the other side of the Jedi, I'm like, yes, more. And whenever you show me the Sith and they're just cruel, evil, that doesn't exist. You know, as a writer, nothing is completely evil. So when you have the stranger kind of showing this other side, I'm like, and as a fangirly, yes, please, I would like more.
So I will talk about one small nugget, and it's only in the first chapter, so not a big spoiler, but like, and this fic is a mother's touch. If you're browsing AO3 and you're interested in what Patricia is writing, but how do you write someone climbing onto a pallet sexily?
Slowly and with a lot of thought.
Makes sense.
And actually, and I have romance writer friends, so
Gotcha.
they have taught me a great deal. And I always like, can you please read this? And if it sends them and they send me awesome text messages going, oh, my socks are off, I did well.
Yeah. I mean, when I read that sentence, and I was like,
Pep, where are your socks?
when I read that sentence, I was like, this is not a sexy scene. He's literally climbing onto a pallet. Like, where's his finer comforts, you know? But like, it's still read sexily. So for sure. I mean, if you're interested in that story, definitely look up on our archive of our own, A Mother's Touch. But on today's episode, we're going to be talking about, of course, Vergences in the Force. That's part of our lore segment. A lot of misconceptions lately with the completion of the Acolyte and people's thoughts on how it ruins Anakin's special classification. I don't get it, but we'll explain the lore behind Vergences, and then of
He's
course
my
we're
special
gonna,
little boy.
and then we're going to be talking about, of course, the latest kind of rumors. We really don't kind of make a name for ourselves in commenting on rumors, but you know, there's a lot of chatter going around about the movies shifting around for Lucasfilm. But we'll get there. We'll get there when we get there. How are you guys? How's your week's been? Anything interesting going on?
Pennsylvania has just poured rain all week,
Oh,
and
you guys have
it's
a
been
storm,
rough.
right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm going to a book festival for a book signing tomorrow and over the weekend, and I don't know. I might just need to get a rain suit or a tauntaun, something.
That's
Choco?
awesome. I haven't officially done it yet, but I think I'm quitting my job.
Oh,
Yeah.
Big move.
No, big move, but I hate my job with a fiery passion of 1,000 suns. It saps my soul. Uh, but it was something that I largely. I fell into the financial industry at a point in time because my wife and I was getting married. My company that I had started was kind of feast or famine, and I wanted something that was more solid, right? But I've always used it to support her, and so she could, she's had time periods where she wasn't working or wanted to change jobs or careers and all this stuff like that. And now she's in a really good place with that, and we just paid off some things. I think this is the next step, so I can start making moves my own.
there you go.
Nice.
It's definitely a big move. Hoping for some great things to come your way, and for a rising tide, essentially. Not to make that joke amidst a hurricane. But Patricia, a really quick question for you. How did you get into Star Wars, and what has it meant for you growing up and being an author right now?
I saw Star Wars, A New Hope, when I was 8 years old, and I went home and wrote my first novel. I wrote my first novel about a little girl who had to save the galaxy with her magical horses that were each a different color of the rainbow, because when you have a horse, you don't need the Force. And I knew I was going to be a writer, and I knew that one day I was going to play in this playground. And I'm a gamer. I'm a D&D. I used to be a competitive D&D player. I was
That's awesome.
ranked in the top 100 in the world at one point, and it was awesome. And I went to
I
a
have
convention.
questions about that.
Yeah, me too.
And I went to a convention, and they had this Star Wars the role-playing game. What? And I sat down to play with a guy named Pete Schweighofer and had the greatest time. And as a writer, you try to capture things, so that you can save them. So I wrote this story, and he had something called the Star Wars Adventure Journal. So I wrote this story, and I thought, oh yeah, he'll love this and he'll want to publish it. Well, he called me back and he said there were elements of the story that had already been published, but that I should write something else and send that to him. And 5 days later, I was publishing my first Star Wars story out of the cradle, and that just became the start of something great. So yeah, it's just weird writer vibes.
Nick Knock on TikTok says, "Use the horse, Luke."
That's right. Absolutely. Don't need the Force when you have a horse. That's right. I have two horses, and I call one the Jedi Master, and one is the Darth of our little pair, and yes. So when we
What
had
type of
dark
horses
side
are they?
cookies, I have a thoroughbred, and he is the Dark Lord, and he only gets the red cookies. And Jedi Master, she only gets the blue cookies from Oreo, the light side ones. So and I won't consume the light side cookies. I eat the dark side ones.
No, but my family, we used to breed Morgans
Oh
back in the
well,
day.
wow!
So
What a connection! Awesome.
If
I
you,
grew up riding Morgans.
if you don't know anything about horses, that just sounds out of context really weird. We used to breed Morgans. Dang.
that's true.
Our family
Where's your
bred
mind going
steeds.
right now? I'm a little concerned. First the palate, and that being sexy, and now breeding the Morgans. I'm a
I
little
blame you.
concerned.
The palette was
I'll take that.
written by you.
I'll take that.
Shout out to St. Pat in the chat for being a member for 38 months. He says, shout out to all the TTRPGers. Which brings me to my next question. How do you competitive D&D?
Once upon a time, before Wizards of the Coast got hold of Dungeons and Dragons, there was the RPGA, there was the Role Playing Game Association, and there were competitions across the world where you could play. It was like 5 or 6 people at a table, and when you were done, you voted on the best player. And I just happened to be a very good player and ended up at the semifinals at Gen Con. Now, I haven't been at a Gen Con in decades. I miss it terribly. Yeah, that was in the good days before Wizards got hold of it.
So
That's cool.
was it like PvP or?
No, you actually sat at a table and you played Dungeons and Dragons, and these were modules that were specially prepared by their writers. And there were special magic items. You couldn't just roll up in there with your own kind of character. Your character had to be like registered. Your magic items, you had to keep like a binder of them to prove that you had them. And it was such a cool time. I really sort of miss it.
That sounds fun. And
It was a lot of fun.
And you would compete within these modules with other players. Like,
Yes.
Was it like time trials or was it like just performance based?
I think it was like 4 hours for a game that you could go through. And you're calling back my salad days. I was having a good time back in those days. Because we traveled to Jersey, we traveled to Pittsburgh, we traveled to all these different places to go to these conventions, and they were 4-hour sessions, and it was just a Dungeons and Dragons game. And they had others, but I was a D&D player, and I had this one character. She was a cavalier, and I could probably find her buried under dust if I looked for her. Yeah, you got well known. You got to be well known as far as a player if you were a good player. There were some judges who were your game masters. That's what we called them, judges. They would seek you out because they wanted you at their table because they knew you were a good player. The last time I played was a special competition where you couldn't bring your character. They handed you a character. And of all things, they handed me a paladin, the Sith princess. They hand me a paladin. So I called an attitude, and I decided I'm going to call him The Rock. And we're going to speak about ourselves in the third person the entire time. I won the table. It was I'm having an attitude, and yet I still win the table. It was cool. It was cool.
That's awesome. My childhood, I was a Magic the Gathering guy.
Ah, yes.
I could probably, I wasn't like super like hardcore, like competitive or, in the scene, but I could probably, rummage through the old storage and find my pencil case full of my old decks. But yeah, I totally missed the train on the D&D.
Well, I'm a high school teacher, and being a nerd and an otaku, I get all kinds of extra points with kids when I break out my commander deck, and I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
I took my spell at Yu-Gi-Oh for a hot minute, but like card games, and also there was the Star Wars card game that came out. I want to say in like 2016, around then.
Yeah.
Do you recall that one with the
I do.
dice? It had its moments.
For a moment.
Yeah, but ultimately, I was a Project M. I play the Smash Brothers competitively. That was my thing.
Cool.
Yeah. Have you ever given Gwent a shot?
I love Gwent, and I actually had the game. I forget what system, what console it was on, and then they no longer supported it. So I need to get back into Witcher 3 so I can go and play Gwent because I love that game so much. I'm one of the weirdos that collected every single card in Witcher 3.
Dang.
Yeah.
It was. I mean, it was much like Outlaws with Sabak. They're getting really good at these mini games.
Yeah.
And I would love a standalone Sabak game, and I would also love like a tabletop Gwent. Because it was just
wouldn't that
so,
be great?
Yeah, it was just so kind of fresh. Like the whole kind of battlefield, like affecting the battlefield and like placing down like it's like snow and ice on a certain row of cards. It was just very, very interesting because it was always about the card versus the card, right? And there was never any kind of external hazards to worry about.
When I first started playing Magic the Gathering, I had some friends, and they called the rules gentleman rules. You could only attack the player to your left, so that you had to defend against the player to your right. Versus what the kids get into, where you just annihilate a person and get them out of the game. Our whole thing was, it was like a role-playing thing. You really were a wizard coming onto this plane, trying to take it over with your creatures. But I find that a lot of the kids today, it's all about killing someone as quickly as possible. So you have a 1-color deck or you have a 2-color deck versus having a 5-color deck and a game lasting for hours. And that's the same impatience that comes to Gwent. When I talk to my kids at school, they don't want to strategize and take time to think about it, and that's what makes the game fun.
Yeah. That's largely the appeal for most of these card games.
Yes.
Like I even started.
That's the point of games.
Yeah.
Just punch each other. Right.
Goddamn. But when it's cards, you can't press the A button to throw a punch. Right. Like I even gave Marvel Snap a shot, and it is pretty interesting. You know, there's like 3 columns, and then and their territories, and you have to play cards to take control of them based on the power of the card. But then there's like augmented cards that saying like if the opponent played a card in this territory, your control over this doubles, and like it's interesting. Like I mean, I think
Sea of Villains with cards.
Yeah, I mean, I just. They're getting so good at these, and I think it's largely because it's become digital. You know, being able to kind of consolidate all of these rule sets into a package that like handles all of the thinking for you. You know, like whenever you were at the table, like I'm gonna play this capsize on this enchantment, and then like you would have to be like, does that work on this? But like in this case, if you're playing like these games, you try to play a card and you're like, you can't do that. Like it has the rules baked in, and it streamlines the accessibility for sure. Which brings me to like
no, that's
Baldur's
definitely
Gate.
true. No, I was just gonna say though, you saying that just triggered me to think about how growing up, games just didn't have rules. Like if you lost the paper, it was just gone.
Yeah. Everybody has their own family's rules of Monopoly.
Yes, because you lost the paper at some point, or more likely it got ripped up in a Monopoly incident. But yeah, just the games just had different rules because you'd lose them, you'd have to make them up, and There was no internet. You can't look it up. You can't call someone. It was weird.
Raise your hand if you have a piece of paper that with a 5 on it because you lost some Monopoly money. You had to make your own.
Yeah, we had to do that.
This is official 5.
This is Choco Gardens. How about you, Patricia? Any favorite games growing up? Outside of what you already shared?
Monopoly was one that I hated playing because my mother was an accountant for Harley Davidson, and playing with her was just absolutely ruthless. And I like what you said about making up your own rules because I was an only child. So I knew how to take care of things and entertain myself as far as the games, and I would just change the rules. And I can't think of anything in particular. I'm thinking of my TI 99. Remember that little computer, that Texas Instrument computer? I think the game was called Seamus. It was my first introduction into video games. And yeah, so that was the first real game with like digital rules that I played. But I can't think of any board game because I broke it and made it my own.
And that's what makes you a writer, you know?
I think I don't know if this explains things, but my first games was Doom and Descent.
Yeah, that explains a lot.
Hey, I'm Asian. That has nothing to do with anything, but I'm just saying.
Well, I belonged to what they called the Monks Club. There were about 6 of us that would like bring our computers over and have like LAN parties, and I was the only girl. I was the only woman. And, you know, it was so funny because when one of those friends got married, he didn't know what to do with me because I couldn't be on the bridal side. So I ended up going to a bachelor party, which was really interesting because I was part of the crew, you know? So yeah, those were the days, man. LAN parties. Those were the days.
Yeah, man. I just, so many fond memories, specifically.
So many. You just triggered, right?
Of Halo 2. Yeah.
For me, it was Rainbow Six. It started with GoldenEye. That was the thing to have like sleepovers with, and then Rainbow Six, Raven Shield, all of those like I actually played competitively in Raven Shield.
Ow.
Those were the days.
All I remember from Halo 2 was my pink armor. I was terrible. Yeah. I am terrible at the first-person shooters. I had a couple of seniors talk me into getting Call of Duty, and it was right before a snowstorm, and it snowed so bad in our county that school was closed for a week. So for a week, I played Call of Duty, and I made the leaderboard once because I died. And when I respawned behind the bad guys, and I shot all of them. So when we did get back to school, that was the talk of the school that Miss Jackson made the leaderboard. She sniped them all. It was great. It was so cool.
I just realized you're perfectly positioned to be sorry, Miss Jackson.
I will beat you. I will find you and I will beat you. And I with a lightsaber.
I'm used to it. We got beat with rattan sticks.
Okay, yeah, you win. Okay.
But
then
like
I'm gonna need a flip flop. Then there it is.
But Rainbow Six was actually my first kind of like dip into game design too, because like I used their Unreal editor, which was called UDK at that time, to build out GoldenEye maps. Like I made the Severnaya bunker, I made the facility, and it was like kind of a pride to see people playing on these GoldenEye maps in Rainbow Six. And that was cool. Like the first time I was like playing with tools, and then I would start modding out like Ghost Recon and making regular old carbines shoot like Gatling guns. It was fun. Oh man,
that's cool.
OG Doom is legit, Nick Knock. Thank you. Shout out to I'm a Spooky Kitty for having a name that reminds me of Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back when when Sean Scott says, "I'm a noble rabbit." Shout out to VGC and shout out to Disney Killed My Dog Wah with the profile picture of Theory or Chet. You guys like my new profile pic? It's apt. For one thing.
And I don't have the stream up, and I should. I'm getting there. Leave me alone. Don't judge me, all right?
You will be
Oh, and I
judged.
love the Attack on Titan hat. That is pretty cool.
Oh, yes.
I used to have a bracelet with that emblem on it, but then I lost it. So now it's the Jedi symbol. Which is
I had a kid who walked in the hallway and had a jacket on, and I was like, "Oh, that's a really cool Attack on Titan hoodie. That's really cool." And the kid just stared at me. And the next thing I know, they appeared in my class the next day. They had their class changed.
Wow.
So it could be in my class. I want to be with that crazy teacher who knows what that means. So yeah.
You know, there's a viral class also. I think they've done videos where like they're doing like slides, right? And then like the teacher's like, today we're going to be talking about, and then like the next slide would be like Satoru Goju, and then like the whole class just like loses it. And I'm just like, does she know? Is she part of this, or is the kids putting her up to it just to go viral? But it's like, I feel like it's a good move for teachers to know or to be kind of relatable in that regard, to have those interests that line up with the youth, so that like, not even just with the youth, but with like that just line up with pop culture and nerd culture in general.
Oh, absolutely, because that's necessary for me. Because like Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor, I was playing while the kids were playing. So I was like, if I got stuck, you were coming to my house to get me past that part. Because I was playing on the wussy part because I just wanted the story, because I love the story. And there were parts where I was like, I am not that talented as a gamer. And I would tell the kids, you're on notice. I will call your mom and you will come to my house and you will get me past this part. But I was able to do it by myself, so I'm happy.
Yeah, that's the Doom part in me that explains why I spent almost 2 hours trying to beat the Rancor on Grandmaster on stream. Like there were people that tuned in and then like left and came back, and I was still hacking away at the Rancor. It's like, what's up, man? Thank you for coming back. Yeah, I'm still trying. Die.
Did you do like the bone thing in his mouth? Is that what you were trying? Oh, no. No. I had to go look at pictures of that, and I thought, that's very pretty, but I'm not trying. But
that's not how I beat him. So like midway through, there were people in the chat being like, you can force, throw bones in his mouth and stun him. I'm like, really? And then I tried it a couple of times, and then it worked, and I was like, oh, this is going to be great. But then like every time afterwards, it did not work. And I was like, no, screw this. So it was just like 6 minutes of dodging perfectly, / run away. Dodge, / run away. Slam the ground, jump. Oh, it was just like it was just a marathon of pattern recognition and getting timing down to the exact millisecond. But it was cathartic afterwards,
You take that moment. Thank you for taking that one for the team. We appreciate you.
Well, I appreciate that you appreciate that. I did at some points though, like every time Choco would talk to me about something that happened in the game and I was like 6 hours behind, I'd be like, let me lower this difficulty real quick. Cause I gotta be able to talk to him about this stuff.
So when it comes to geeky games, although there are plenty of them that I would like to play on like a harder difficulty or something like that, I always just stay at like just the regular, enough to keep me interested, but I need to finish the story. And I learned that because when streaming, people will try to ruin your stream by giving you spoilers to the game.
Ooh.
At least here on TikTok. So then I was like, fine, I just gotta be ahead. I just have to already know, before I do anything. So it usually ends with me speed running through the game and then not wanting to play it for a while.
But that's what happened with Outlaws too, right? I told myself, because I wasn't going to try to spoil it for people and try to get spoiled, I was going to play the story through and through, and then I would stream a new game plus, or just like a second playthrough, or just in general just running around in the world. I mean, I spent like at least 60 hours not playing the story. I was literally playing for 6 hours. I was playing Sabak just for 6 hours.
Oh, wow.
I made
mad respect on that.
I made 400,000 credits, and I was like, I can pay off my death mark. Just walking by the posters of K Vest. Oh, like you saw the 4 and then the 000. I was like, I can pay this off. But
I'm struggling with getting that game because I was a Star Wars Galaxies girl.
mm-hmm.
And before Sony ruined it by making it 9 iconic classes, there were 32 classes. And it was the sand pit, I mean, you could be anyone. There were people that came on and they were dancers and they were musicians, and that was hours of their play. There was a gal that I knew that she was a merchant, and she would go from mall to mall to mall. And it was a true player economy that if I was a bioengineer and I was I think it was called a hunter, it's kind of equivalent of a hunter in World of Warcraft. I would go and get animals and I would get pelts and I would sell them to her, or I'd give them to another character that was a bioengineer so that she could cook certain things that gave a buff. I had a doctor character and I used to sit in the Coronet spaceport, and before people would go out to do their missions, they would come and get a buff. And I just miss those interactions, and I just don't know if Outlaws can capture that. I know it can't.
No,
nothing will.
No,
it's definitely not a stand-in. It's definitely not going to.
That was a moment.
Same feeling.
That was a moment in time. I honestly don't think that time can be replicated. I don't think
ever.
People have the patience.
No.
At this point,
and also about Jedi characters. The original Jedi characters were so difficult to get, and you had to train in secret, because if anyone saw you with a lightsaber, you ended up on the bounty hunter terminals. And now the bounty hunters, players, are coming after you. I remember my doctor used to wear the Leia slave girl outfit because I was cute. And this one Jedi, he's like, hey, I died. Can you come res me? Because if they cloned, they would lose so many points that they had grinded, did a lot of grinding. And he was like, yeah, can you come get me? I'm like, sure, no problem. Where are you? Dathomir. What? you where? So I'm on Dathomir in my little slave girl outfit because I don't have any clothes. And I lost a speeder bike. I was chased by Night Sisters. I was chased by Rancor. I am running for my life, and then the next thing you know, he's like, I'm so sorry. And then 2 million credits. He gave me 2 million credits. It was so cool. I just
That's awesome.
never have those moments again.
Yeah, and this is something that I'm hoping a lot of people keep in mind as the remaster for KOTOR comes out in like the next couple of years. Because just as we have like these debates with EU bros when it comes to like, us purportedly crapping on EU, which is not the case. We've always said that our distinction between canon and EU is simply so that we know
what we're talking about,
what we're arguing against in continuity. So if it's like, if you argue for example, in Acolyte, Kiadi Mundi's birth date, I'm like, but that's not canon. That's not to say EU sucks. It's like, no, we just need to kind of stay in our lanes here so we know what kind of information set we're working with. And so when it comes to KOTOR and KOTOR 2, that's an experience that'll never be replicated either.
Hmm.
But what we can hope
True.
for is a solid attempt to kind of modernize and bring its story to a contemporary audience that can then appreciate it in their own way. Like we're not like Saber's not going to give us KOTOR all over again, like what we experienced when we played it. But people today, the young kids today, and new fans will be able to experience the story. Hopefully, like it's not that different. There's some changes that I think I would even make because you and Drew are Sith fanboys. But like,
I'm just desperate for a story. That's what I'm so desperate for. And I'm desperate for a game right now that can give that to me. That I've gone back to Mass Effect. I've gone back to the beginning, Mass Effect 1, because you got to play the whole way through and take a character the whole way through, just because the story was so good.
No, I'm absolutely, and that's a great call out, because I love Mass Effect, the first one. Can't stand its gameplay, and it is something that kind of happens with these old games. As you acclimate to the new trend of control method and the new trend of interactiveness, KOTOR is still a great game to this day, but so many people are turned off or can't wrap their heads around the combat system. Right? And so that's my hope in this kind of remaster, where it makes it more accessible and they can experience hopefully the same story that we experienced, but it's a lot more enjoyable from a perspective of someone who is just used to contemporary controls, and they're not used to, the RPG elements that were in the old one.
I'm just mostly happy.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, my hope is that casual players are not left behind, because we are a large piece of the pie, and we just are not built for some of that more complicated controller use. Thus Jedi Survivor and Jedi Fallen Order was a little taxing for the Patty, and there were moments that there were a lot of cuss words that were used. Or I'm thinking of, oh my God, I need to have a kid come over here and do this for me. And that's why I hope they always keep difficulties, because I keep looking at Elden Ring and it's beautiful and there are horses in it. And I want to go and play this game. But the kids are like, no, miss. It has no difficulty level. You'll have to, no, miss, don't do it. And I did buy it. I didn't get very far, just because I don't know what I'm going to do. So I went back to Mass Effect.
This is interesting too, because Street Fighter 6 was very innovative. I was about to be like Jimmy Fallon, innovative. It was very innovative in its control schemes, because it has its classic mode for, your 6-button fight stick players, but it brought in an easy mode. Where it was like one button for everything, and it would give you combos. It would give you all the special moves with one button. And so I feel like, for accessibility's sake, if we're dealing with like the Jedi threequel, they should make a one button accessibility option where you can do all of the combos, and you can it comes baked in with some like interesting combos with the Force too. Like, you can do / force lift and push all with one button.
I mean, that sounds a lot like, because Square Enix did something very similar with the latest Final Fantasy game, which is now available on PC as well. You could definitely do that. And I agree, Star Wars it's important that Star Wars doesn't leave casual gamers behind, because Star Wars is above all else Star Wars. So if they make a game like Jedi Fallen Order, which is as Souls-like hints, as well as like Metroidvania, things like that. The most important aspect of it is a story that has a genuine narrative and good characters, so that you can play through it. Right, the whole goal, because there's a lot of games nowadays, and I think this is where gaming started, where you just didn't beat the game. You may never beat the game. You may never find out what happens. Only the chosen few. Yeah, that's not something that they need to do here for Star Wars. I'm looking at the gameplay and stuff from Dragon Age Veilguard, and that looks like that could be very good for.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
I'm very excited for that game too.
Yeah, me too.
But I don't want what to happen with Mass Effect 3, where you come through the game and you've made some very distinct choices, and now those choices don't matter. And that was just made me so sad. And don't force me to play with other people. After being all day at school, and I want to come home and play a game, I don't want to be in a party with anybody. And I don't want certain levels of the game contingent upon having to be nice with other people. No.
Yep.
I want my solo game. Leave me alone. And let me achieve that.
I'm still mad at Pokemon for being like, you want this evolution? You have to trade it. Like, God damn it. And that's why I use cheats.
Man, Game Genie was a game changer, right? Back in the day, or was it? What was the PlayStation version? Game Shark.
Yeah, Game Shark.
Blue Eagle Gamer says all this talk got me reinstalling SOTOR. It's never been uninstalled, to be honest. I try to find time to log back into it to play Legacy of the Sith, but I don't. So it's kind of one of those weird games.
It's one of those games where when you don't play it, that they're changing and tweaking and doing all this stuff. So I know by the time I come back, I don't know does my armor work? Is my armor doing anything anymore? Am I the right level? What's the level cap now?
Am I best
try to do my rotation, and all the moves are different. My character's naked because they decommissioned half of the stuff they were wearing, and you're like, come on.
Oh yeah, you're talent
it's so
trees.
Funny because I think about your purple gear, your orange gear for all the raiding gear. Because I did the raiding in Star Wars, I did the raiding in World of Warcraft and Lord of the Rings, and I just giggle every time I watch episode 5 of The Acolyte, and my girl Jackie got her purple gear out and orange gear and went like Leroy Jenkins. I'm like, baby girl, please don't stay away from that. That's bad. That is smell. Go away. Stay away. And just he did her ugly.
Yeah. In terms of the way you're kind of framing it, she did kind of run into a party wipe mechanic.
and how many of us have done that? You had all your gear on and you were feeling good about yourself and you went for the end boss, but that really wasn't the end boss. That was the big
yeah,
big
exactly.
It's like when the eye mechanic goes on 2 players in your party, and then you both run left and you're like, God damn it. We're supposed to say that we're supposed to run in different directions.
This reminded me of Tecmo Wrestling for the regular Nintendo. I played that game. I played it all the way to the finals, and then I beat the Ultimate Champion. And then all of a sudden, in the game, the lights flicker, and then Satan comes out, and you have to wrestle Satan, and you're like,
what?
I was not prepared. This was not agreed upon before we started. You know what I mean?
Thank you. There's a bad guy in Diablo, the Butcher. And when Diablo 4 came out, I'm doing really well. I'm like level 6. I'm having a good time in this dungeon. And the Butcher comes out of nowhere. And it happens. He just appears. And he just lays you out. Because if you're not a high enough level, there's no winning. You can run. He's coming for you. And it's the same kind of thing. I'm doing really well. I'm having a good time. I'm catching my loot. And then the Butcher shows up. And it's over.
Yeah.
Done.
Lewis on TikTok said Jackie put up a good fight though. Got to give her that. Yeah, that's what we're saying.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Her legendary gear and everything.
Absolutely. The first time he came in her, she was absolutely defensive. And then when she was like, "Oh, no, you kicked me. I'm going to get you now." So then she became defensive, and then he was on the defense, which was so wonderful. And that was my girl. That was my girl.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jackie. Rest in power, queen.
You know, when like the entire boss arena becomes a party wipe, and there's one safe space, and everybody stacks up. Yord mistimed that. He was in the safe space with everybody.
Hurts.
He was in a safe space with everybody, and the boss was still in their like party wipe animation. And he ran out. He was like, oh no, he doesn't.
Oh my god. Oh my god. When the stranger swings his
So he's me in
lightsaber
Destiny.
at Yord, I was like, did you see how hard he swung his lightsaber? I'm like, Yord, dude, what are you doing? Just go back to the ship. Go back to the ship. But see, here's my problem. Osha loses her Nubian Queen card, okay? Because, you know, black people in movies, we go out first, okay? So just don't be there. When the stranger came down from the treetops, Osha had 3 heartbeats to run, and she didn't run. It was a horror movie at that point. It was no longer space opera. It was a horror movie, and she didn't run. So whatever happened, it's all her fault. It's all her fault. And also, when Darth Smiley's in her face and the lightsaber comes on, if she had taken a knee, she could have been just fine. Which one are we killing first? I give you my soul. But she didn't do that either. So I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan.
That's because he was coming down and she's like, I sense arms.
No, arms. Oh, no. Okay. You got a point.
She's like, I should run, but I must see them.
But the arms,
Veins
the arms,
popping.
everything.
I thought you were gonna make a Vader joke. I thought you were gonna be like, I sense something I've not sensed since. Exit stage left.
Because I'm telling you, because I love horror movies, but I'm like, this is the point where everybody needs to get back in the car and go back to town. Just please.
Yeah. That's me. I'm like, this is and this is where I go home.
I like to
Call me or don't.
I like to point to a streamer that I watch, and Choco's heard me tell this story 1,000 times, but his name is iMaverick, and he loves to play scary games. No, he doesn't love to play scary games. His chat makes him play scary games, and he's like, he always at the beginning of a game, he's like, I'm doing this for you guys because you know we black people are not gonna be in these situations. So he's playing this game called Outlast, and he's driving up in like the intro, and he sees like the creepy castle. Is like, nuh-uh, U-turn, credits roll. If you black, we're not here. We're gone. Oh my gosh.
True.
Silent Hill, when it first came out, I thought I was going to be cute and try to play that. Yeah, the first jump scare, turn that right off. No, that's just not going to work for us. And I love horror movies, but no.
Yeah. But I mean, I guess it makes sense because all of those characters, even in the scary games, in the movies, they're all white. They're like, what's that? What's that?
Let's go. Oh, the trap door opened. Let's go. Yeah, no, I'm getting in the car. I'm leaving now.
What? Oh, it's just your run-of-the-mill, like, old, closed down insane asylum. Just we can stop there. We can hang out for a bit. And you're like,
so you come up on a dilapidated, like hut, right? You peer through the window and you see some person hunched back on a chair that's facing away from you. Are you concerned? Do you check on them, or do you leave?
I say, man, he's got his own a whole house, and like in this economy, I'm, you know, yeah. I mean,
Patty just left.
I'm not looking in the window. I'm calling an Uber. No.
Yeah. And then the Uber's going to refuse.
No. Don't even say that. Don't even put that out there for me. No.
Actually, no. The Uber is a white driver, so they'll probably come in.
Oh, did you see what that was in the window? Yeah, no, I don't know if you guys have heard of the sport of fox hunting.
Did you enjoy your stay at the murder house? You're like, what?
I don't know if you guys have heard of fox hunting, where you get on a horse and you have the hounds and the whole thing. And I used to do that as a kid. And there were 5 of us. We were out hunting. It was the children's hunt, and it was a disaster. We had lost the hounds, and we were going back to our parents with our tail between our legs, and we're walking by this dilapidated shack. And the girl's telling us a story about a lady who was really sick, and she was going to die. So her husband went out to dig her a grave, but he got attacked and eaten by a bear. So now her ghost was in this cabin. I don't know what we saw. I don't know if we saw anything, but the next thing I know is the Kentucky Derby was played out on the road, because we just took off at a full gallop, terrified. And I mean, they were like, our horses are just galloping down the road. It was hysterical. It was absolutely hysterical. If I have to go somewhere scary on horseback, is where I need to be. Yes.
That works.
For some reason,
because the horse won't want to be there either. You know,
no,
you don't have to
not.
convince him. You know,
that's like your early warning system right there. Like, it even happened in fantasy, Lord of the Rings, going into the mountain. Horse is like,
not going.
Sometimes you gotta listen to the animals, man. They know.
That's what I'm saying. If you have a horse, you don't need the force. There it is.
That's what I meant. So got it. Disney killed my dog. Why? Says, anyone excited for Silent Hill 2 remake?
Movie or game?
I think it's a game.
I might be excited, but I'm scared already.
Yeah.
I've never played any of them before.
They're great games. They're pretty, but they're scary.
You should do. I mean, I don't want you to go against your nature, Choco, but I think you should do a live stream with you playing the first one.
Agreed.
It'll be the shortest stream of your life, but it'll be interesting to see it nonetheless.
I mean, I am gonna have more time available coming up real soon here. Perhaps we'll put on the maybe pile. We'll put it on the
episode
Love
200
it.
pile.
Yeah, it'll be an event that we'll have to. We'll arrange it. We'll make it a thing.
Gotcha. Lewis says, I love the element of horror for Chimere. I hope they keep that element whenever they introduce a future Sith. Yeah, I think so too.
It was a horror movie. At that point, I'm like, what is going on right now? And why is she not running? Because she should be in sprinter pose, just gone. No.
I always
and maybe
thought...
that's just the gamer in me. You know, just the boss drops down, and you know you're not wearing your right gear. Run.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm always yelling "strafe" at the TV. Why do people run in straight lines? I'm just saying.
Why do people
that
backpedal?
Strafe, crouch spam. Yeah, crouch spam doesn't work in real life. Just so you know.
Also,
it's exhausting.
Yes, you wouldn't be able to crouch spam in real life. Question for the chat for the clock side and the play button side. Do you guys prefer George Lucas's mustache twirling Palpatine Dooku Sith, or do you guys prefer the Stranger and Plagueis?
That's tough, because I think Palpatine is really, really good for what he is. My issue is when you have the Inquisitors become so cartoonish like they were in Kenobi. I serve the Empire. I love the Empire. I do. Rebel scum. You will not find any rebel insignia in my house. I don't own any, you know, but when you turn my people into cartoons and into clowns, that upsets me. So Chimere was wonderful because he was coloring outside the lines. but I wouldn't call him evil. I don't feel Osha fell to the dark side when she killed Soul. She did justice. She did justice. You know, you can tell me I'm wrong, but that's sort of how I feel. So I love both. You know, it's kind of like Obi-Wan to Luke, the traditional versus the new that was coming in. So I love Palpatine, I love Dooku, but I love what Chimera represents as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I this is where I really love George Lucas's ability to get people around him that are good at stuff, and then also to let stuff go, because like everything I know a lot of people love Count Dooku and stuff, but that none of that comes from anything George did. Right, it's all stuff later that was backfilled from Clone Wars and books and comics and all this stuff, because he literally just showed up in the film, and that was just a very George thing to do. It's just the villain just pops up there, and do you know what he wants or anything like that? I don't know, and that's why I'm nervous. I feel like people will want to go back to that because it's familiar, but it's not better, you know.
And how much of that was the magic of Christopher Lee too, because that was just
yeah.
They don't build the actors like that anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of which, we did also recently lose Dame Maggie Smith.
Yes.
So just kind of shout out to my favorite professor at Hogwarts. I unfortunately am not old enough to have appreciated her earlier works, but that's what I know her from. We're losing a lot of great people recently.
Yes.
I don't want to bring it down though, but I kind of wanted to use your statements as like a jumping off point for a little bit of discourse.
Okay.
So you don't think that Osha fell to the dark side, and it was justice. How do you feel about May's version of justice?
Whoa, that's a really, really great question. I'm not sure May got justice for herself as far as what the Jedi and everything have done. Between her and her sister, I think there's peace and there is goodness now. But I think there is no justice because she's now with the Jedi and they're going to use her and abuse her in bad ways to get to Osha. And I just hope there's enough May in there that she resists it. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. As far as justice with her sister, I think she's good. But with the Jedi, they still did her dirty. And I don't think she got justice as far as that's concerned.
So to clarify what I meant is, those are all good points too. But like, I meant her wanting accountability rather than death. Like her wanting Soul to, tell the truth and face consequences, rather than Osha's version of justice, which was revenge. Oh.
Nope. No worries.
Can you hear her still?
Yeah, I can hear her. You can't hear her?
Hello?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Element!
Hello now. Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. All right. Sorry about that.
So where did I lose you?
You were going to re-clarify the question. You're going to clarify the question. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. So, what I meant was May's version of justice, which was seeking accountability, seeking Soul to tell the truth and face the consequences of his actions, versus Osha's version of justice, which was revenge.
Oh, very much. I believe May got that because that's what she wanted. She wanted him to confess. And I am so conflicted because I love Soul. He's the only Jedi that I really think I like. And he did a bad thing. And for him to confess it was far worse than May killing him. Far worse. Because she forced him to face the truth. And then for Osha to hear it on the back end. And because he's always scrambling. Oh, well, you were young. Oh, yeah, well, I'll explain later. No, you need to explain now.
Yeah. Really good answers. Like a lot of times this fandom has difficulty having these nuanced conversations about these stories, right? You know, there was one person that was, there was one person I was talking to that couldn't get around Soul's actions. Not to say that his actions were justified, but just kind of try to kind of put yourself in their shoes and see why it happened, right? Like when we talk about how could he choose Osha over May in that scenario when he's holding up the bridges, and I'm just like, well, you know, there's a lot of things running through your mind. You just got done fighting Kelnaka and like,
oh my god, that was so crazy.
Right? And so you're out of breath, you're there, you're trying to save both of them. Like legitimately he was trying to save both of them, but like at the moment when like the split second it happened, you can kind of understand, not justify, but understand why he chose Osha at that point.
Yeah, but I was annoyed with him because he couldn't tell the difference between the twins.
Also true, yeah.
Off and on. And the stranger could. There was that creepy moment in the apothecary when he's like all in her face. You look exactly like her. Yeah. He could tell. And it was such a cool dynamic between the two of them because they both wanted the same thing. They wanted a student. So yeah.
One thing that I was always saying that I noticed, especially with the way that episode ended, is that I do believe Soul could tell them apart, but he didn't want to, like in the moment, and it leads to him just because I love Soul as well, but that also makes it a little bit selfish because it's like what you want over the reality that's actually happening. But yeah, when she walks up and he hesitates in a weird way, and it feels like he's gonna call her by her name, and then he just doesn't. And of course, when he does find out, he still acted like, well, yeah, it was like he already knew, but yeah. That's how I read it.
Well, which is why I appreciated the Acolytes so much. There's a lot of pushback. I hate you, idol. Reminder on live studio. There was a lot of pushback on the Acolyte for the portrayal of the Jedi, but you know, I keep on saying that every story that leads to their fall in the prequels is going to show those cracks, and it's going to show the hubris that leads to their fall to begin with.
And do you not see that through the prequels? Yoda knew it was happening. You know, it was like any other police force that was sort of falling apart. And I just don't understand how people don't see that, why that was a problem. And seeing, you know, your heroes, Senator Raincourt, while he's a supreme jerk, you know, he is correct. While you're looking up at your heroes, you can't see what's right in front of you. And I think that's true for the fandom, which I've blocked half of them, I think.
Same. It's just, you know, it's difficult to comprehend how people don't see the narrative through line, you know? It's like, of course they're going to be portrayed this way. because you're only 100 years removed from their biggest kind of their apex of hubris.
Yes. And hubris is the correct word for it. It was an extreme and excessive pride. Someone was talking about why the Jedi fell so easily to the stranger because it was just one of them. They had never had someone fight like that with them before. Someone who fought the rules. I live close to Gettysburg, and once upon a time when they fought, they would march across the field and get laid out as everybody was shooting them until you had some crazy Americans who decided to fight like the Native Americans and hide behind rocks and trees and not do it the honorable way and shoot. Yeah, guess who was winning those battles? The folks behind the trees and the rocks. It was different. So yeah, the stranger was just really different and just brutal in what he brought to them, and it was deserving. It was a wake-up call. Well, they didn't wake up. Sorry.
Which is why I'm excited for the new Jedi Order with Daisy Ridley, and I'm also excited. There was, I forget which video I was watching. It wasn't a grifter video, but it was a legitimate kind of gripe that I also share, is that we have so many stories of the Jedi failing. We could use like an Old Republic or just even an older story of the Jedi just living their message. Just being the symbol.
I will never write that.
Of course.
I think we just I think
we're just perpetually within this downfall of the Jedi Order timeline.
What? But we have to be. You know, the Jedi have the Superman problem, where if it's all of them winning, there's no story. You can do one-offs, I suppose, but if we always kind of need that conflict. Even if we go back to the Old Republic, the Jedi were at war then.
So let me clarify this. It's not about winning or losing, but the majority of the stories we see around the Jedi are always around a Jedi who failed and fell. Versus a Jedi like a story of Satil Shan, for example. A Jedi who was magnanimous, who lived up to their tenets and achieved greatness by finding, the first Jedi temple and like bringing it back to the fore and becoming a Grand Master. Like a Jedi who just succeeds in stopping evil,
Yeah.
I mean, now that you say that does make me think of because that's largely what the expanded universe is those stories.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the Acolyte, it's soul kind of succumbing to his his baser desires and justifying all of his actions.
So I'm curious
and then Chimere falling.
I'm curious how you guys feel about this, because it's something that Disney has just been doing in general, where they've stepped away from the old trope of just the bad, big bad evil of they stepped away from the villain, the victim, and the hero, and went into more of the villain is the victim of another story, and the victim is also the hero, and they have just a mentor that kind of helps them to champion it. They kind of have changed that trope a bit. I'm curious how you feel that relates in terms of Star Wars. Is one preferable to the other?
I really feel Disney has stepped away from the hero's journey, and that's a mistake. Because the protagonist should have the option to answer the call to the quest or not answer it, and then suffer as a result of that. And then when you bring that to the story, the antagonist has to have a similar thing. One of the things as a writer that has to be important is your antagonist has to be every bit as fleshed out and wonderful as your protagonist, because the antagonist believes they're the protagonist of their story. And that's where I feel Disney has sort of fallen down. They haven't brought that kind of a villain. Though the stranger came really close, the scar on his back, evil Vernestra. So, and you want to know this story. What happened that turned him onto this path? Or was he punished for turning onto this path? And it makes him fascinating. And now the Jedi stand against him. And who will stand against him? And you're looking at Vernestra going, I'm not sure how to feel about you. Because you have these really rich characters who have their own character arcs. And side characters need to feel that they are the protagonist of the story too. And I think in the writing, I just think there's some poor writing going on, and not just with Disney, but in Marvel. And these things have been forgotten definitely. In just good storytelling, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I'm venturing into writing that story, and I hope I can deliver one that is, well, I'm trying to talk to Choco about that particular storyline in general.
Well, writing to me is the sacred playground. I call it the sacred playground, and I would love to visit you on your playground and just to talk. I call it the inner 8-year-old. My inner 8-year-old is Han Solo. She tells the stories, and I just write them down. It's like a whole biblical out-of-body experience, and it's just wonderful that it's like kids. When little kids tell stories, you let them tell stories, and they tell some very entertaining stories sometimes, and you just don't get in the way of that. And that's how my writing process is. The inner 8-year-old is just like unicorn vomit. Bleh, there it is. And then I have to go through and edit all that. So I'd love to visit you on your playground and just hear some things and offer suggestions and whatnot.
Absolutely. Yeah. The first chapter has already been written, and we wrapped on voice recording. So nice. That's that. I'm gonna start editing that all together. But the next chapter, we're jumping forward in time to the actual fall and what happened. And so me and Choco need to.
And you have to carry those arcs, and just like you have the climax of the story, because I'm a creative writing teacher too. You have a climax of the story where the protagonist makes a key decision of many decisions that causes the story to come to an end. Your other characters also have to have story arcs that may or may not have climaxes depending upon how close they are to the protagonist or the antagonist. A book that I recommend to you is John Truby's Anatomy of Story, because that book is fascinating, because you have characters who are in conflict with each other before they even get to the antagonist. So for instance, Leia and Han are in conflict with each other. Leia and Luke are in conflict with each other. Luke is in conflict with Ben. And it just creates these wonderful, I call them kernels of conflict that will blossom later in the story. And writers of today have forgotten this. They have forgotten these little things, these little trails. And I think audiences have too. They're interested in the gore. They're interested in the big explosions. They're interested in how big that gun was. They're not interested in those little nuances of the story. And that really makes finding stuff to watch on TV and at the movie theater very difficult.
Yeah. Totally.
Any recommendations, outside of Star Wars? What are you on now? And what do you recommend people take a look if they want something well written?
I've sort of gone the nonfiction route right now, because my school district enacted the largest book ban in U.S. history 4 years ago. And I'm actually writing a book with the 4 kids who fought back and the other teacher who fought back. So I'm in the nonfiction world right now. I actually read a book called Black and White Space. I can find the author's name for you. I can't think of it right now. And that book helped me to write an essay on Uhura. I was asked to do an essay about just the women of Star Trek, and I chose Uhura. And I talked about how she navigated white spaces and how Gene Roddenberry did his best, you know, even though he had some really crazy white supremacists because he was indoctrinated. People were indoctrinated at that time, and he was trying to break out of that. Let me see here. What was the latest? I'm trying to think of the late, because it's been a while. Like I said, I've been into like Sword and Shield. That was a comparison between Malcolm X and Dr. Martin Luther King. It's been really super fascinating. And I'm trying to think of something fiction-wise. It's been a while. It's been like 2 or 3 years. So Tribes, I'm reading Tribes. You know, I'm learning about being okay with being a Black woman. I grew up in a white world. I grew up in white neighborhoods. I went to a private school. I rode horses. I didn't know who I was. And it wasn't until I wrote my debut novel that I started to really explore and have an exorcism of me, to appreciate and love me, because I grew up with the hero default. I believed that the hero had to have blonde hair, blue eyes, and white skin. I grew up with that, and I wrote that for years into my 50s. And here's a sad story. I was at Gen Con walking behind Mark Hamill, and he was walking towards Tim Zahn at the West End Games booth, and I was going to be able to talk to Mark Hamill. And I stopped because I didn't believe my Blackness should be in his presence. Not that I thought he was a racist, because I didn't believe that, but I didn't feel I was worthy as a Black woman to be in his presence. That's indoctrination.
Yeah.
So I'm learning to undo that through some of these books. Me and White Supremacy is another book. Just learning historically where some of these things came from and trying to break through. And that's why The Acolyte was so important to me, because I saw a hero who looked like me. I didn't have to pretend to be anything else, right down to her dreadlocks. I didn't have to be anything else. And the hatred and the vitriol that came, that's what Black people and people of color live with every day, and how you're going to be perceived.
Yeah.
And y'all know that.
Yeah,
Sure.
I'm familiar.
Especially when like when the dog whistles starts piling up.
Oh,
And they're like,
Ugh.
and they're like, no, they're erasing men. I'm like, but there's the strangers, like white men. Like, oh, that's what you mean. Got it.
and the thing that always happens is they try to separate or ignore completely the historical context of the meaning behind these things. And that's the whole core of all of it, you know? And so it's just irritating. What if the roles were reversed? I'm gonna slap them.
If you told me they were recasting Star Wars tomorrow and that Idris Elba was going to play Han Solo, I would jump up and down. But if you had asked me that 15 years ago, I would have thought that was a very terrible choice, because Han Solo is white. No, Han Solo is Han Solo. As long as you can play him snarky, and you know, Idris Elba, I think, could probably do a really good job as Han Solo. And it just saddens me that people want to put a color on everything. Like I was told years ago, Patty, there's no Africa in Star Wars, so you shouldn't expect to see Black people.
There's no Britain.
And that's why I wrote Black Sands of Socorro, you know, a source book for the Star Wars game, because I wanted a planet for Black people. Because I didn't know where the Black people were. But even then, I was too afraid to say that they were Black. They're dark skinned. Because I didn't want to offend anyone, you know, with my Blackness. Do you know what I mean? And it's just so sad. And I've just gone through a whole evolution in my life that, no, they Black. Get over it. They're Black.
Bliggity Black. And I it's funny because like it's like Black people were slowly creeping in, and then finally, you know, addressed internal things, and now we're seeing the pushback of that very thing, and it's very overt and very explicit. Like there's a reason why the word woke specifically is being used, and the people who, and it makes me sad because there are people who have been taken in by the narrative, and they don't understand the meaning of, they're repeating the dog whistle. They don't know that it's a dog whistle. They don't know that by doing this thing, they are calling out to be surrounded by more of them and perpetuating the violence and danger that they do. It's just crazy times, man.
Yeah, Play Button Chat said they banned Diary of Anne Frank and called it pornographic.
Yes. And the
that.
truly sad thing, and this is in the book that I'm currently writing, it's one of the essays I wrote, because I dealt with you're giving pornography to our children. No, we're not. You know, the book Push by Sapphire talks about the sexual assault of the protagonist. And if you're calling that pornography, what you're saying is that sexual assault is consensual. And it is not consensual. And when you ban these books, you are saying to children and people who are survivors of sexual assault that you need to be hidden away too. Seriously? Yeah, no, we don't do that to victims. We don't do that. We don't do that.
Not to mention that one of the biggest purposes behind, before stories were written down, it was an oral tradition.
Yes.
Primarily cast down, by the women, and most of them were parables for people, for children to learn how to escape from danger and dangerous situations. And so those things are part of it. That's baked in. This whole thing is a lesson. And it's funny because now it feels like the pushback is against anything that has any sort of lesson or value beyond something to do while you're eating popcorn,
Anything that has a lesson about acceptance of other people who are different than you. That's where I've seen it. And that's what bothers me. There's this beautiful book that was also on the ban, and it was called Not Quite Snow White. And it's a children's book. It's a picture book, fellas. And it was banned. And it was about a little black girl who was auditioning to be Snow White. And she was told, Snow White is white. You can't be in that part. So she still did the singing. She still did the dancing. And she was the best one. So she won the role. Why is that book important? I'll tell you why that book is important. I had a kid who came into my class. She was going to audition and she was having a panic attack. The show that we were doing at my school was Mary Poppins. It was a little black girl. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're going to audition me Mary Poppins. I'm so excited. And she looked at me and rolled her eyes and said, Miss, Mary Poppins is white. I'm not auditioning for that. And it just hurt my heart. Why wouldn't you? Why couldn't you be a black Mary Poppins? What's wrong with that? And that's what we're saying to our children, that you can't be something, and that's unfortunate.
To know your place, and it's
to know your place.
That's what it is. That's what lack of representation gives us. That's what I've felt. The story I always share is playing Star Wars with my friends, being told I can't be Luke Skywalker, I can't be the hero. I could be Chewbacca or I could be Lando.
And that's
what it does.
It's part of the systemic and internalized racism that people have trouble confronting, because and I'll always say this, the very term forced diversity is racist. Because it presupposes the default being whiteness. Yep. So anything other than white is forced diversity, when diversity itself includes white people. But if you presuppose that the default is white and anything other than that is forced diversity, that's internalized racism. Like, you can't make an argument like saying, oh, they're just making this cast all kinds of different races so that they can force diversity. Like, no. The cast can be 3 white people and 2 black people. It doesn't matter. It's diverse.
If you do an open casting call and the character's race doesn't matter, then you should expect people of all races to show up, right? And
Yes.
you should expect them to be
Yes.
cast. That's
Yes. And that's
That's how
why
it
I
should
think
be.
Hollywood has a problem with Manny Jacinto, because he is so wonderfully and beautifully ethnic and so talented, but he looks a certain kind of way. And they're not sure how to sell that, instead of just casting him and letting him sell it.
Yeah. Which is another internalized racism, which is the best person for the role.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know the
I
little
think
girl
I've-
who's been cast to play Talia in the Percy Jackson, and she's already getting the backlash. It's
Yeah.
already happening. Like Amandla, she's already getting the nasty comments, and I'm like, that's a little girl. Are you kidding me right now?
Not only is that a little girl, but the author of the book is the one who's choosing the people.
Yes.
He's choosing who embodies the character the most to him, the creator of said character. There shouldn't be anything more than that.
Yeah. And so the best person for the role, again, is another presupposition that the default is white, right? Because whenever we see a cast revealed to be any kind of composition of person of color, there's always like, I wish they would focus on the story rather than the cast, or I wish they would get the best person for the role. And I always say to myself within my head, if it were white, would you be questioning if that person was
Nope.
the best person for the role?
Not even a question. I had a kid in my class, black kid, and he would come to school like once a week, and found out he was a Star Wars fan. He loved Luke Skywalker, and we would tease each other because he was light side and I was Vader on the dark side. And I thought, I'm going to offer something to him. I was writing Gone to the Winter Circle, which was my short story in the latest From a Certain Point of View anthology. And I remember telling him about it, and he just turned and looked at me and said, "Miss, how do you write Star Wars? You're black. Tell me we don't have a problem." Yeah, seriously? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was told that all my life growing up. Actually, certain creators much larger than me, said they started making videos because they were like, "Oh, a black guy is talking nerdy stuff. Like, that's cool. We could do that." Because that just wasn't a thing, you know.
Yeah. And
Listen, you can be somewhere in between Stefan, and Steve. You know, it's not a zero-sum game.
And this is what we truly kind of hope for when we go forth with our discourse and our effort to inform rather than misinform, is that it's when we call out internalized racism, it's not so that we can justify hating you. It's like so that you can recognize this and see that part of yourself that's making these defaults, these judgment calls, and recognize it and be like, maybe it does exist, and maybe this is something I have to look at. And it's never from a place to blatantly vilify anybody. Of course there's
That's
those.
why I love your content, because both of you, your content, there's such wisdom in it, and there's such grace. You give such grace to people who sometimes really don't deserve it. But what you're talking about, Element, is being called in versus being called out.
Yep.
No one's trying to guilt. No one is trying to shame. You're simply trying to educate. But are people, white people, able to be called into the arena? And this is how I feel. And if you completely invalidate people of color, you can't be in. You can't be called in. You have to understand where people are coming from and empathize and maybe lock hands with them to defend against what is going on. And that's why I love your content, both of you, because you do that.
Appreciate it
Tremendously.
and it's an honor to hear that. But then
I mean, and you bring up an amazing point, because there is the perception that, well, I can't be racist because, like, I have friends who are black or whatever, same thing with misogyny, where it's viewed as if it's synonymous with hatred, but it's not always hate. It doesn't always come out as hate, right? It doesn't always come out intended to be that. My wife and I, we moved to this place, and she's like, "Is that a gang?" And I'm like, "No, those are just black kids talking." And that's my wife. But my wife, where she grew up,
I mean,
there's no black people.
We're all kind of like guilty to with internalized racism, even within our own cultures too. Like
absolutely,
yeah.
But being able to recognize it is the point.
Yeah, like we would go to like a really popular Chinese restaurant. We see a table full of Chinese people with really nice suits. I'm like, those guys own this place for sure. They're the triads. But like, but there's also the people that are truly outlandishly racist that we will call out. The people who called Manny Jacinto island monkey. The people who dredge up old prejudices will always call out.
No.
But to build on Choco's point about, it's not always about hate, but that's why we use the word prejudice, because it's a prejudicial conclusion. It is something you've prejudged, which is something that you can change.
Having dealt with the people who were the book banners, who were just a small minority of just some really ugly people, I don't even call people racist anymore. I call them supremacists, because they really believe they are superior. And they talk about teachers indoctrinating kids. No, you have indoctrinated children. You have been indoctrinated to believe that you are the dominant species. And that everyone else and everything else is beneath you or somehow tainted in some way. And how do you beat that? Because that is truly where the systemic racism, the system institutionalized, comes from. This feeling of superiority, and keeping other people down so that you can stay on top. That's frightening.
Yeah. Although I'm just going to say it. We're better than white people. I'm just kidding. I was saying our food's better, our martial arts movies are better.
Oh my God, you did not just go there.
For legal reasons. For legal reasons, I'm being facetious, but yeah, it's sometimes we like to tease people, No, I don't.
Well, that's the other part of it too. Is
for real? I have white friends
now. Well, because people are like, anytime I say anything, I get labeled this or that. And I'm like, but I criticize things all the time, and I don't get, there's a nuance there that honest people can find. You can't find it if you're dishonest. That's what's problem.
If you are mature enough to be called in, you will find the nuance, and you will, if you're truly looking to learn, you can be called in. But some people just got to be called out, and yeah.
Nick Knock just says, "Hey, I get it, man. We just have potatoes, no spices. Listen, I can go for potatoes as long as you season them right. Put some butter in there, some chives."
Something.
Put some bacon in there too. Potatoes.
Oil and some
bases.
chicken stock.
Hell
like
yeah.
you can. Oh.
Definitely. Like, listen, level up your blanch games. Always in a stock of something. Like if you're blanching broccoli or vegetables, use a stock, please don't use water. But if you do use water, season the goddamn water.
You're allowed to season the water.
Yes.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be water, just plain water. Michael in the play button side said, "As a white person, yes, you are." I mean, we're joking, and you know, we're among friendly company, but like, it's really not about superiority or inferiority. It's just recognizing that we're all different, and that's okay.
And loving that and appreciating that. One of my principals goes, "Well, I'm colorblind." I said, "Well, I don't want you to be colorblind. I want you to be thinking of me as a black woman when you are dealing with me, you know, and to not be afraid of that. And if necessary, to ask questions." I was at a teacher's conference, and I was sitting by myself, and a white lady wants to come over.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
Hopefully I'll come back.
I mean, I heard that.
Uh-oh.
I heard that, yeah.
You just can't see you.
Oh, well, anyway, I was sitting at a table.
Oh, there you go.
And this white lady came. We sat down. We were having a grand old time. And a black lady came over and joined us because we were having a grand old time. And the white lady said, "What is the more appropriate term for black people? Is it black Americans or African Americans?" Well, this other black lady became like one of the dragons of House of Dragons and like started snapping at her and, "How dare you not know?" And I'm just kind of staring at her going, "This is a teachable moment. And you just attacked this woman." And I turned to the white lady and I said, "I'm moving to a different table and you're more than welcome to join me." And we just moved, you know, and I said, you know, some people like, black people like to be called black American, some like African American, you know, you might want to just ask, you know, so as not to offend. But I said her behavior was so inappropriate, inappropriate. And that's why people are afraid to ask things about other cultures. Like I just got a girl who is from Egypt, and we were reading some poetry, and she read a poem that she wrote, and I said, "Now in Arabic." And she's looking at me like, "Yes, now in Arabic." And she asked me later in class why I made her do that, and I said, "Because your classmates don't always have the foundation to hear that kind of thing, and you just shared that with them, and you shared a gift, and that's very important. Thank you for doing that."
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we just need to be able to accept each other. Really, that's like the bare minimum at the end of the day.
And appreciate each other.
And yeah, and to what you said, the colorblind approach isn't an approach, right? The colorblind approach supports the supremacist side. You know, when we typically hear it, what it's actually saying is, I'm going to use my background as the standard and then compare everyone against that, despite us not having that same background.
That's excellent.
And so that's why it can become a problem, right? You at that point you become judging people by how close they are to acting like white people, and it's not ideal.
Play button chat says, "I grew up with white conservatives. I once told them I prefer Popeyes over KFC, and they called me a race traitor." Jeez.
That's great. Oh my god.
You should have just told them, "No, I love flavor." Like that's it.
That's great.
I love it because I know that means someone was just looking at the Colonel's face and you're like, "Yep, this is a proud white man chicken." You know what I mean? Like,
I forget the provenance of KFC's recipe. But
couldn't tell you.
Yeah. I mean, I prefer Popeyes over KFC too.
Oh yeah.
But even more so, Jollibee chicken over Popeyes. We all have different
Jollibee's
I
are delicious.
prefer the local Greek restaurant because their fried chicken is the best in the county. So there it is.
Okay. You know what? Greek restaurants often are just random spots where like it's one of the best burgers you'll ever find. You know, just like
the miracle of food.
Yeah.
I once went to one and they had a cheeseburger, but it was pitas instead of buns. And that was delicious. And it had
I bet it was.
and it had tzatziki instead of the usual ketchup, mustard, and mayo.
So ultimately,
it tasted like a Euro burger for real.
it sounds like ultimately you have to eat from the Kogi barbecue truck, and then the joys of of having a lot of different ethnicities share.
Yeah, it's tough to track down the Kogi truck though. But before we run into any longer into the episode, let's go into our main segment in the lore section of our episode, which is everything you know about Star Wars is wrong. So here we go. Everything you know about Star Wars is wrong. In this episode, Anakin does not own vergences in the Force. Choco, why are we talking about this subject?
I mean, it's been some time since the Acolyte came out, and that was the main source of contention was when we find out that a Vergence was used in the creation of May and Osha, that it somehow affected or was a copycat or the same thing or even similar to Anakin, despite not being so at all. But Vergences are all over the place in Star Wars.
Yes.
We've seen quite a few of them. We've seen the cave on Dagobah. We've seen the weird butthole on Octo.
You call them space buttholes?
Yeah, look at it. Tell me, tell me that it couldn't have been designed different. You know what I mean?
Sphincter.
The Jedi Temple is on top of one. And that's a whole thing I would love to explore, but no, Anakin does not own them. He just happens to be one. Yeah.
Yes. So what makes Anakin special in the context of the Skywalker saga, because we have to kind of dispel this notion that Anakin is the only thing and the only special thing that's ever happened in the Star Wars galaxy. If you go back 25,000 years to the first Jedi, like, are we still looking forward to Anakin as like the prime example of a special person, or like a unique Force sensitive? No, there's hundreds throughout the thousands of years of Star Wars galaxy history. There have been special people, including May and Osha. From Star Wars 2020 issue number 20, locations exist where the Force is more sharply focused, but dangerous these places can be. Vergences they are called. It's tough reading Yoda's lines. and should not be explored without training and permission. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant has one such. The Living Sea of Gazian, another. Jeddah as well. This one is from the EU, but still very much in continuity. From Kreia, KOTOR 2, there are places in the galaxy strong in the Force, light, dark. They are born in places teeming with life, Brendok, and in places that are filled with death, worlds whose surfaces are graveyards, whose screams echo through the Force. It is possible for men to give birth to such places, to leave wounds on the galaxy itself, which is the Vergence on Coruscant that the Sith created, a dark Vergence, after the Great War, in raising the Jedi Temple during that war. And the Jedi tried to reverse that and built a new temple on top of it, and they were like, yep, we'll bring it back to the light. Choco mentioned Dagobah. The temple on Ilum is a Vergence. Even inside the butthole, we got the Mirror Cave on Octo. That's a Vergence. And the latest one being, of course, Brendok, which again does not cheapen Anakin's uniqueness, because what makes him special is that he is the Vergence. It's never been around a person, as Qui-Gon says, or as Mace Windu says, located around a person. I don't know why we always revert
If
to the
anything,
southern accent with Mace Windu, but it's internalized for me. I'm sorry.
if anything, though, it makes Anakin more special.
Yes.
This untapped raw thing that like everyone's trying to explore. The Jedi are trying to find. You know, that was the only thing powerful enough to create these beings, and then he just is one naturally. That makes him more special, not less.
Yeah, and going off of the quote from Kreia, you know, places teeming with life, places filled with death. Brendok, this is now headcanon. Brendok to me signals a vergence created by the hyperspace disaster in death. When it's teeming with life and the Jedi are now surveying it and they've found this new vergence, I feel like it is as a result of the creation of Osha and May. And I think that's when it's teeming with life, right? Because the hyperspace disaster caused this graveyard and now it's a dark vergence, but the creation of Osha and May could have, you know, made it a vergence that was based in life. And that part of the headcanon is now over, and I shall revert back to regular canon lore. Yeah, it just, Anakin is special because he is the vergence, but vergences existing out in the galaxy is normal. And people throughout Star Wars history have always used these vergences for extraordinary feats. And funnily enough, to kind of close out this segment,
I mean, Lothal is also a vergence, and
yes,
we got to see that whole back half of Rebels was trying to gain and tap into the power of that vergence.
Jedi temples are typically built on vergences, so
yeah,
you can always count on that fact. But funnily enough, the visual dictionary for the Rise of Skywalker actually calls the Skywalker saber a vergence. It turned into a vergence because of its vast amounts of history and death. And a lot of people like to say, oh, what about the Youngling Slayer 3? That's why it's a vergence. Now, and this vergence allowed Rey to look into its history through psychometry, but also show her visions of the future. Visions of Kylo Ren, her dyad. And so vergences is just really a special way of saying the Force is really strong around a certain location or object, you know.
As a writer, I've always thought the Force was just another entity, like Mother Nature, perfectly imperfect, and it glitches. And it has these vergences where it glitches, but they're miracles of its existence as it tries to keep this balance that's going on. That's just the writer in me.
I mean, that's absolutely true.
I like to think of vergences as the Force's pores, and it needs a new nightly routine.
You've gone from buttholes to pores, and I feel like you're just trying to give the Force holes.
I'm in agreement.
Hey, you know, that's because I prefer to use the horse.
But you're absolutely right. It is. It is. There's a certain spark of sentience. There's a certain part of will that is required for something to be an entity, right? And so we have the living force and the cosmic force, and they live in parallel with each other to connect. So, like the living force of a planet reaches out to the cosmic force, and the cosmic force connects it to another planet, and it's like this shared energy that surrounds us.
The circle of life.
The galaxy together.
From the day we arrived on this planet.
You think he's a Jedi?
Which is why I hold this ultimate theory that I've always pushed since the beginning, that becoming one with the Force was always the plan. And it goes to like Yoda in the Clone Wars. when he says, "Open to us a path remains, that unknown to the Sith is, through this path, victory we may yet find, not victory in the Clone Wars, but victory for all time." And that's because as they accept death and accept this selflessness, they become one with the Force, and they permeate through it. And this is what Rey is latching onto with "Be with me," with all of the voices coming in and telling her to rise up, Rey.
Which is why there needs to be some series that includes or continues the story of the stranger. And Manny Jacinto needs to be in the writer's room, because he talked about, in creating the character of the stranger, he created this stillness. He had to think about this stillness. And that makes me think of T.S. Eliot's poem, I think it was Dry Salvages, where the line says, "We must be still and still moving." Is that not the stranger? And I'm like, oh, let that boy into the writer's room and let him start talking with his character. Because I want to explore that. I don't want to just see a Sith be explosive and breaking stuff, and, let him explore that stillness that, when it's disturbed or when it's directed, can become destructive if necessary. We must be still and still moving. Yeah.
He definitely embodied that when he was wearing the mask and he went like this. I'm just like, bro,
Yeah.
Can you not do
Darth
that?
Smiley was scary. He was scary.
No.
Yes, that was wonderful. That was so cool.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Was that its name?
Oh, that was cold. So cold.
I mean, in all honesty, when he said, "You brought her here," and I was like, "You're the one that stabbed her." Come on now.
But wait. The shrug. You brought her here. I was, oh,
Yeah, it was
son,
cold.
Stop. Just stop.
It was a cold roast. You ever have cold roasts? But yeah, I mean, when he was in Dragon Con, he said season 2, The Acolyte. I was like, yes. When we met him, I was like, season 2, let's go. He's like, yes. So we'll see. I mean, no one's ever really gone. Right? As we move on to our next segment, which happens to be about Lucasfilm's return to the movies, because that's been the chatter in the industry as of late. As they shift gears, they've canceled, reportedly now. All of this is reportedly. We seem to be dealing in the space of sources tell me a lot these days. So it's been reported that Taika Waititi's movie has been canceled. It's been reported that Mandalorian Season 4 has been kind of refitted into the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, and that Rey's New Jedi Order has been delayed. And so, before I throw it off to Choco and Patty for your guys' takes, I truly think that this is their way of coalescing the stories and we spoke about this earlier in the pre-show, coalescing the stories into building blocks for them to finally land on a script for New Jedi Order. Because I think it started out with, let's tell this kind of new story, but I think that they want to set something up using the narrative they have with Heir to the Empire, with Thrawn, with Din and Grogu and Ahsoka and Baylan Skoll, wherever he's going, whatever he's trying to find and discover. So what's your guys' take? What's your guys' reaction to these reports? And where do you think the future of Star Wars is in the movies?
I need people who can tell good stories. I don't need fan service. I don't want fan service. Particularly if it's stuff that I don't know, that I can't get into the fan service. Tell me a good story. And I'm okay with them streamlining retconning whatever they need to do to get back what they need to do, with Heir to the Empire. Please be truthful to the books. Tim did a really good job with those books. And no fan service. Give me a story that is reminiscent of what has come before.
In that regard, do you think that Baylan Skoll has inadvertently become not a one-to-one replacement or standee, but rather a different Joris Cabaeth in that sense?
I don't see any connection in the characters myself.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he's not a one-to-one transposed character, but rather that's there for the Heir to the Empire storyline without giving us a Joris, like a true Joris, that they're just going to use Baylan. What do you guys think?
Depends on who they get to play him now. Do they have they named anyone? Oh, that was such a loss.
I like Liev Schreiber. I also like Sam Elliott. Like, can you but then that'll make him like a
Sam
cowboy at
Elliott
that
is a
point.
bad guy. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if that's possible.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I think Baylan Skoll is a more interesting character.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay.
And so
I gotta keep clarifying. I'm not saying that they're going to make him Joris. I'm saying that's their replacement.
Where it could be headed. Yeah, I get it.
They're still going to use Baylan Skoll as a character, but they're not going to give us Joris in the Heir to the Empire storyline. They're just going to use Baylan and his story.
I mean, if by that you just mean a force sensitive dude, then sure. But again, I just don't see any like narrative resemblance personally. So I wouldn't say so, because even understanding it doesn't mean it's a one-to-one, doesn't mean it's a replacement for the character, but I see no resemblance. Like, not, like they're the antithesis of one another.
Well, you never know. Season 2 of Ahsoka, he might come out with a lizard on his shoulder. This is what I've been searching for.
They need to be
my
tight
bride.
with the cast, though.
Like,
They need to be tight with the cast, though. They need to be tight with the characters and not have a bazillion characters, because I think that's where the sequels sort of got in trouble. There were just too many characters.
Yeah. Too many characters and too many promises of arcs for those characters too. But I do think that, as we discussed in our pre-show, I think they need to think very deeply about what a villain could be for Rey, because she doesn't need another Palpatine, though they can bring in, like Choco suggested, a Sith presence that has been kind of proliferating out in the galaxy that thought they were the ones that were the true Sith. They were the rule of two. But also, like, the setup of Thrawn with the Night Sisters, and possibly even creating a foil with the Ascendancy, creates a world of possibility for storytelling with Rey's New Jedi Order.
Rey needs two antagonists. She needs something that looks like the Empire trying to come back and rise, and there needs to be a face to that, and then there needs to be an opposing Sith presence that also is rising as well. And if the two meet, what happens? And how is she going to react to either one? Is she going to be forced to choose which one to go after? And one of them needs to just bring the stranger, and somehow he was like cloned, and it's like, I'm just playing. But that's what's going to be so really interesting. I don't know if you've ever seen a movie called Stardust, but it's one of the
That's with
stories that I like
Claire
to
Danes?
use. With yes, Michelle Pfeiffer, Robert De Niro. I like to use that for my high school students so they can see story and they see the princes, the evil princes, they see the evil witches going after the goal that the protagonist also has, and all the conflicts that sets up. But that's good storytelling, fellas. That's good storytelling. And someone needs to make sure they tell a good story, not just, oh, Rey's gonna save the Jedi and raise them all, and look at all these cameos we have. I don't care about your cameos. Tell me a good story with a good villain or villains that I can believe in.
No, I totally agreed. I think that's actually a great setup, to be honest. Because like the Sith, like a Return of the Sith in Rey's movie could represent something more spiritual, and kind of be an undermining of the efforts to rebuild the Order, but also like an Empire like villain could also represent the need for, like, you know how they were saying that in the initial promos for this movie, Daisy was saying we're trying to answer the question of if the galaxy needs the Jedi, and if an Empire like facsimile comes out, does Rey need to act? Will the galaxy need a Jedi presence? Can they fight this force by themselves?
Let me make it worse, though. What if the Empire-like presence is actually just another form of the New Republic, which is damaged, and they want the Jedi back as that police force that they had before, but it's under bad pretenses? What choices is she going to have to make? Now you've just made things worse. That's why I always say to my kids, how can you present something to the character and then make it horrible? Make it a catch-22. Make it the rock in the hard place.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean,
and
that's...
Yeah, go ahead.
That sounds like a lot of what's being hinted at with the new Captain America movie, of like what they're hinting. I don't know if they'll actually pull it off or stick the landing, but the whole thing of, no, maybe it's right, we do need you, but they're kind of looking at you side-eyed, expecting you to do things that are going to push that limit. I think that'd be a fantastic story for Rey to have to choose, like, okay, this person did something bad, but I mean, much like the book Living Force, you know, that I freaking love this book. You know, you have the case of a character who's doing something bad, but they find out the reason. He has an ailing father he's trying to take care of. This person's doing something bad, but they're not a bad person, and they're in a bad situation. And how do you respond to that versus someone who's willingly doing stuff, you know?
Yes.
Those are the type of questions that I think it should, but I shudder because I feel like the fan base right now is not ready for it. But it's what we need. It's what we need.
No, the fan base will never.
But we need the subtle nuance to say, the Jedi are good, but they're very far from perfect, and things can be tweaked, and even once we tweak them, that still won't be perfect.
And the other thing that sort of has been lost in a sense because of just too much going on is, what are the stakes? Yeah. What can be lost if Rey does not do this? And it should be something deeply personal that can not only affect her, but the people around her that she loves and the galaxy potentially. So what are the stakes? And I sometimes don't think, oh, it's Star Wars, it's flashy, it's catchy, we don't need stakes, let's just go. No, give me stakes. What can be lost?
Medium rare. But also to Choco's point of, damn, I lost it.
Sorry.
Oh, it's not your fault. I often, the train often derails just intrinsically, you know?
Yeah, so
What-
give me the story of the new. Actually, no. What I'm just saying is just gonna retread the Leia book. So never mind. It's a great book.
But I think I think oh no, this is what I was gonna say. You said, which raises really good questions. Another good question is from the play button chat. Is it true that Luke drinks hot chocolate in Heir to the Empire?
Always. He's always puzzled.
Didn't he in Last Shot as well?
Lando gives him hot chocolate, and he's always like, "What is this? What is this substance? Oh, this is very good. You chocolate, you say?" And that happens a bunch in the expanded
I've
universe.
always had so much fun in my stories with when it comes to like Star Wars food, like Orishi honey sticks and just fun stuff. Just please, let's be a little more creative. Hot chocolate.
Yeah.
Come on now.
I mean, with coffee being calf, you could have just made it hot chalk, you know? But it's kind of like at that point.
I mean, that's my new username. I actually dance under that name. That's my
That's your OnlyFans.
That's my OF page. Hot chalk.
Oh man. But then there's also this possibility that Cal Kestis might make a live action debut, with Respawn saying that the threequel will be the last of his story in the games. And I latch on to that naturally because you don't say yet or in the games if there's nothing implied by that sentence. You know? Choco said it earlier. He's like, you don't say I'm not doing that yet if you're not going to do it eventually, you know? So I'm wondering how you guys feel about a potential Cal Kestis live debut and why it's a wrong move because we don't want white people in our Star Wars anymore. Just kidding.
And he's a ginger. That's like extra white. No, funnily enough, you know, the protagonist of the Jedi Fallen series was supposed to be a black woman. But then
Oh, a black woman. I knew black, but not a woman. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then they were told no. But tell me more about DEI. Anyways, I think there's so much. I mean, he is the character. He loves it. He loves his world, and I think it'd be so easy to bring him in, right? And he's the right age to play. Honestly, a variety of roles in a variety of places in Cal Kestis' life. I kind of want to see him and Ezra just get a beer, though. Just be like, man, I've been through some stuff. What have you been through, man? You know, like,
I want to see Marin and Sabine hang out.
no.
Ooh.
That'd be an interesting convo. You
Ooh.
know.
In that Survivor, when you have to fly through the air and go through her portals, that almost broke me.
That's a great.
That
was
almost
a great
broke me.
sequence.
I love Cam. I think he'd be great. I love Cal Kestis. I love the story. Am I saddened that he doesn't look like me? A little bit. And was supposed to look like me. Obviously, really look like me, a woman. You know. I think he's a fantastic character because he's not the epitome of the Jedi Order. He's a little tainted, and I can take that.
Play button chat said, "I'm a ginger, so choose your words wisely, you racist."
Gingers are my favorite. There's a kid in this local area who is a professional horseback rider who looks exactly like Cal Kestis.
Does he
I
also
told him
look
that
like
is
Ed
your
Sheeran?
Halloween costume. What was that?
Does he also look like Ed Sheeran? Because
No, he looks better than Ed Sheeran. Just saying.
Gotcha. I was just watching one of the clips from Graham Norton and just brought up like 6 people, all gingers, and they all looked like Ed Sheeran. I'm like, do they not just like look like anybody else these days? Ed Sheeran is the ginger. template. He went to Camino and got cloned.
And Ginger's rule. So yeah.
Yes.
Oh man. Do you guys still think we're gonna get the Dawn of the Jedi?
At this point, I don't know what they're doing. There's so many crazy things coming out of Lucasfilm and Disney. I don't even know which way to look, and I'm afraid to be honest, because I don't want my heart broken.
The problem I keep coming back to is that people keep acting like we're still in a pre-COVID world, and we're not. You know, the days, like there's all this stuff, and it's new, it's brand new, but people act like this is the way it's always been forever. So like they want. What's our Star Wars slate going to be for the foreseeable future? And why did they want a slate? Because Marvel put out a slate years ago. They were the first people to do that. And still, like, really the only people to, like, mostly do the films on that slate. And it's not necessary. It's not needed. You know what I mean? Here's what I want them to do. I want them to start pulling as many projects as they can, but like understanding that not all these are going to see the light of day, and don't tell me about it until they're working on it. You know?
Yeah, I actually would love to only hear about projects when they start shooting. To be honest, it's like even in the game industry when we have a vertical slice and announce the game, then it's like, but we don't have anything else. It's like we have the ability to walk through a space and press X on an object. I mean, first of all, just speaking to the game industry as a whole, our vertical slices have gotten really, really rudimentary. Like it was supposed to be a proof of concept of the entirety of the mechanics we were planning for.
And now it's just a glorified commercial.
Yeah, now it's just like a cutscene that's like, here's all the fun things it's gonna look like. I'm just like,
and then 4 years later.
Yeah. So we need to get back into shape.
Then that's like, man, now we gotta talk about capitalism. and like, because like, you know, things have changed to where the goal is to appease the shareholders and keep the stock prices high, which is going to affect your ability to do this and that. And that's especially dangerous at a company like Disney, because of how many different things they have and how separate those things should operate. Now, Lucasfilm is still largely separate, but you know what I mean? Like, telling us a bunch of stuff that's a pipe dream because they're saying it at the annual meeting to get the shareholders excited for the future, because there's a board election coming up or something like that, and then the projects don't come out, and then it just sucks.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Which brings us to our hot takes. Because it's smoothly transitioning into some hot takes. Patty, you got some hot takes, I think, right?
Han shot first. I don't care. Catch these hands. Han shot first. And you will never change my mind.
I'm gonna have to correct you there. Han shot only. Han shot only.
So would it be correct to say...
correction. I accept the correction.
Would it be
Original
correct to say
version, Greedo did not get a shot off.
So just Han shot.
Yeah.
You know, if you go into the Isley Cantina in Outlaws, you only see one blaster mark.
And yep, that's how I got Greedo. That's how I got Leia. You know, you got to shoot your shot.
Yeah. There was also another one that I saw that was pretty hot. That had to deal with a certain hut. Which one was that, Patty?
Oh, about Jabba? Oh, I think it was a mistake, George killing Jabba. Because I think the menace of a crime syndicate is also a wonderful antagonist angle. And just knowing that Jabba's out there and still throwing stuff at Han would have been so wonderful. They brought Boba back. Well, you're not going to bring Jabba back. It's not going to happen. But yeah, that was just a mistake. And I always tell my young writers to be careful of that, to not kill off a really cool antagonist. Let them kind of roll off screen something, and then they can always come back.
Yeah.
I made that mistake with the story called The Final Exit. Years ago, there was a kerfuffle at Lucasfilm, and those of us who did not have a best-selling pedigree, writers, we were told no canon, no main characters, no Jedi, no the Force, none of that. You can't write about it. I didn't care. I was over here talking about black smugglers and pirates. I was having a grand old time until a character came into my head and was like, yo, I'm a theater guy. I'm like, I don't know anything about theater, and I'm a Dark Jedi. Okay, you have my attention, but I'm not allowed to write about you. Ruined another story I was trying to write. So I wrote the story about this Adalric Brandel, this actor, who would use the Force basically to influence the audience as he was doing these tragic characters. And I sent it off to West End Games. And then I get this phone call from the editor. He's like, yo, Patty, I got your story. You know, you're not supposed to do this, right? I'm like, yes. He's like, but it's a good story. And I was like, thank you. And he was like, I'm going to send it to Lucasfilm. And I was like, okay. And that was the phone call, basically. And then a couple days later, he calls me. And he's like, yeah, Lucasfilm likes this story and they're going to publish it. Oh, that's wonderful, Pete. I'm very happy. He goes, and I have a message for you. You can write about anything you want to write about. And where did I go? I went right back to the black smugglers. I didn't care about the Jedi or anything else. I didn't care. Take your toys. You can keep your toys. I'm going back to my toys. You know, so, yeah.
I mean, I think that goes into another, I don't know if it's a hot take or if it's like a Swiss Miss mild, but it's like we need more pirates and smuggler stories too.
We do. And you know what? I'm so unhappy with what happened to poor Finn. You know, Rey gets the lightsaber, she gets the Jedi hood, and then she got the Millennium Falcon. That shouldn't have happened. Finn should have gotten the Millennium Falcon. That's a hot take. He should have gotten the Millennium Falcon and Chewie.
I agree with you, but I would add Poe to that too, because it would be interesting to see that, like, okay, Rey went on to become the Jedi and stuff, but Poe used to be a spice runner, much to the chagrin of, you know, racist tropes.
But Poe needs to now fill that leadership gap.
Well, they're both generals, right?
Right.
Yeah,
they're
both generals.
But he needs to fill that. Leave Finn alone. Yeah. Finn needs to have the Falcon. You gonna catch hands, Element? You gonna catch hands?
Hey.
No. I think Element is. I think he's suggesting that you know, Poe got his X-wing destroyed. You know, and so
they have
he'd
more.
Be like, so he could be like, hey, can I be your Chewbacca? You know, it's. And that's how they keep the resistance on the move as well for leadership.
But I'll tell you why I resist that, because I'm super sad in the sequels that basically Chewie and the Millennium Falcon, R2 and C-3PO became furniture. They were no longer characters. They were furniture. They were just there because there were too many characters. And let's go back to A New Hope, where I don't know if George tried it intentionally, but the use of R2-D2 and C-3PO was almost Shakespearean. They were the blast point, so to speak, that pulled all the other character arcs together. They were essential. They were no longer essential, and that sort of bothered me.
Yeah, I think we're always going to run into that issue when storytellers are trying to move things to the next generation. I almost would think that it's a hot take for me would be if they never kind of made them a part of it to begin with. That's not to say they don't belong in Star Wars, but I'm saying, like, would it have been a better writing decision to keep the focus on the new rather than sprinkling in nostalgia factor, but also letting
Fan service.
yeah, but then in so doing, allowing those characters to fall by the wayside because of that. Because you have to focus on the new. And
I mean, that's. Oh, go ahead.
The difficulty is, Andor, you have a story being told within a Star Wars framework, and it worked. Whereas Kenobi, you had a Star Wars story being told within a Star Wars framework, and there were issues as a result of that as you tried to answer certain questions and certain tropes that fan service that fans needed to have instead of just telling a good story. Focus on the story and drop it into the Star Wars fan work. That is the safest way to do it.
Yeah.
yeah. Were you gonna say Choco? Hot Choc?
So, same exact
down.
thing. Same exact thing. You know, just give me a story. Doesn't matter what it's about. But I think Star Wars fails when you try to tell a Star Wars story.
Yes.
You know, this is a heist that takes place in Star Wars. This is a that takes place in Star Wars. And it has to be that way because at a core level, what you get from it is unique and personal to you. So when someone tries to tell a Star Wars story, they're telling the thing that was unique and personal to them, and that's not what hit everyone.
My very first story in the Star Wars Adventure Journal was called Out of the Cradle. And it was about a Sokoran, the little Prince of Socorro, Drake Paulson. And I think he's 14 or 15 years old. And he's aboard his father's freighter. And they're being boarded by stormtroopers. And his dad says to him, go get in the cradle of the ship and stay there. Do not move. And of course, Drake is curious. He wants to know what's going on. It's not that he's hiding, but he's there and he pokes his head up. He scares one of the stormtroopers and he ends up being shot as a result of it. And the notion is that this is his growing up moment. This is his coming of age by being shot. And this is your life. You are a pirate and you're going to be oppressed by these people. That's the story. The fact that stormtroopers are there and blasters are there and that there are Star Wars aliens there, that's a part of the story, but it's not the story. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's what Star Wars needs to bring back. Tell me a story.
It's basically, yeah, I mean, it's the sandbox that your characters live in. That's really just the fundamental nature of it, you know. That's why I've always said that any type of story, any type of genre can be Star Wars.
Yes.
Right? Which is why I want to do a pirate one with Onaka and Quinlan Voss. But that's just because I love Quinlan Voss and we haven't gotten to enough of him, you know. But any other hot takes?
No, I think that does it.
On the chat, BMA Joe A says, I hope this move back to theaters includes a film with Osha the Stranger and Plagueis.
Oh, that'd be so cool.
That's how I've been kind of coping, really. It's not season 2 that was canceled. It's going to be like The Stranger season 1 or The Stranger the movie or something.
Yeah,
Fingers
I mean,
crossed.
like obviously that's like saying, you know, WandaVision got canceled, which it didn't, but we have Agatha all along as a somewhat sequel continuation of certain character stories. That's all we need, and give it to me in a novel because the racist people can't read.
I mean, they'd rather ban the books, right?
Yes, they'd rather.
That's why they're banning. They're like,
yeah.
Did you say that's why they're Steve Bannon?
no.
I'm terrible.
That was unintentional.
That was great.
Okay. We move on to the wrap up. It's been a cool solid and wonderful almost 2.5 hours. And this is what I love most about doing podcasts and doing live shows, is that whenever we have great conversations, they just roll. And it probably is pretty late for you where you are, Patty, but definitely loved the conversation, loved having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having
coming
me.
on.
It was a blast.
Absolutely. And we will definitely see you again, because as we tell all of our guests, come back whenever you want. You know, if there's a announcement of a movie or a show or any news in Star Wars that just piques your interest, just hit us up and be like, yeah, come on.
Well, keep your fingers crossed. There's a project that's been pushed up the pike that I'm not allowed to talk about, but hopefully I'll be able to talk about in a later show. Yes, very much Star Wars related, and a certain Filipino man. So, yeah. That's all I'm saying, because I'll probably get in trouble for saying that much.
Oh, you're talking about me. That's all.
Yes, of course.
Play button side says, thanks for the show, guys. You do good work and I appreciate you. BMA says, I appreciate you and Pillar of Garbage for fighting back against the grifters that flood the YouTube algorithm. I don't know what you meant by appreciate you and Pillar of Garbage.
Right? What? I was like, is that a reference to me?
I don't know. But yeah, I mean, the gist of the message is fighting against the grifters and the flood of YouTube. Oh, okay. It's the name of another channel. So there's a channel called Pillar of Garbage that's also fighting back. So we'll definitely check them out. Nick Nuck on the TikTok says, where can we follow Patricia or Patty?
Oh, again, I'm on Twitter under Tristan, Treistan. You can find me on Instagram, and you can also find my author website on By Birthright. It's just all together, By Birthright, and it's bybirthright.com for the author website.
Absolutely, and she's a wonderful author as well.
Well, thank
again,
you.
We'll talk about palettes and sexiness and hopefully in the future we can talk more about the project that was hinted at. But Choco, leave us with something.
I know you wanna leave me, but I refuse to let you go. I don't know. I don't know what we're doing here. You can't just. You gotta. You gotta plan this out, man.
Hey, man, you gotta be ready for the impromptu prompts. Is that an oxymoron?
Impromptu prompts to be ready for
Yes.
them as well. I love it.
All right, guys, it's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you guys on the TikTok and the play button side for tuning in and watching the show. Episode 188. We are officially 12 episodes away from 200. We'll start planning out what we're going to do then, but expect an event.
Cool.
But yeah, that's it. On to the next one.
For light and for life.
We are all biceps and pallets and smileys.
And keep fighting the fight, people. Keep the love. That's what
Yep.
we need. More love.
May Darth Arms hold you tight.